Daniel DeGraff. Vice Mayor Jake Parks.
Here.
Mayor Leo Zuber.
This portion of the meeting is set aside for public discussions, an opportunity for the public to address the city council on items that are not on the agenda. If you desire to speak, please approach the podium over there, give us your name and address, and say whatever you have on your mind. Anyone wanting to address the council? Seeing none, we'll move on. Approval of the minutes for December 11th.
Move to approve. Second.
Want to do a voice vote because he can't vote?
Who?
Dean's computer's shut down.
It's on obsolete.
I got 4 beautiful boxes with a little.
Yeah, it looks
circle
pretty cool.
around.
How do you vote?
Pass,
All right,
accept.
That's a yes.
all right, so it passes. Approval of the agenda as posted or amended. At this point, if anyone has any items on the consent calendar they want to pull, this is the time.
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I'm gonna pull 1.4A because it is a contract with the company that I work for, so I need to step out during the vote.
okay. Any other items?
No.
I have two, 1.3F, 1.4D. And yours was A.
1.4A.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second that.
You're still no good, Dean?
He's still slow.
We're gonna have to voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
I can just grab his vote if you call the vote. Yeah.
Okay.
So we do it on our machine?
Yes.
Okay,
Let me make Dean talk to everybody.
all right. So the only one they get to listen to.
Jake. Oh, what's there right now? Thank you. Thank you,
Said
sir.
it at the same time, so I beat you to it.
You guys are amazing, I'll tell you.
These kids.
Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended?
So moved. Second.
Anytime.
Aye.
We haven't done anything yet.
I'm 100% complete, but obviously I'm not. My wife's not.
All right, item 1.4A was pulled by Mr. DeGraff so that he could, so I need a motion to approve 1.4A.
Move to approve. Second.
Don't everybody speak up at once.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. 1.3F, that's me. Why did I do that? This has to do with the appointment of people for the Planning Commission and the Recreation Commission. And before we took the vote, I just wanted to publicly acknowledge Mr. McCusker for the time that he spent on the Planning Commission. He elected to not pursue reappointment. And so I'd like to get a letter or something drafted for him, thanking him for the time that he spent. And in case you didn't look at the packet, what is happening is on the Planning Commission, Mr. West has been moved up from the alternate to the voting member to replace Mr. McCusker, and Mike Garcia is being appointed as the alternate on the Planning Commission. On the Recreation Commission, all three of the members who are up for reappointment asked to be reappointed, and they are being reappointed. So with that, I would entertain a motion. Well, let's do one, the other one, we'll do them both at the same time. The other one is 1.4D. My only question is, this contract dates back to 2003. So we've been using the same company with extensions for 15 years. Is there any reason not to go out and look for proposals?
Staff, we certainly could do that. We've worked with Stantec for the last 15 years.
just due to their familiarity with our permit and the success that we've had with the state and having no issues with the permit and their reporting. They haven't increased their rates since 2007, and we've had the same project manager at Stantec since 2007.
Okay.
We certainly could at least get some prices to kind of keep them honest, if that's what council would like.
Yeah, but getting a rate in 2019 that was the same in 2007, I'm not really sure we're gonna have a better proposal at that point.
No issues
Unless
with
we've
the
really just
permit.
been getting a bad deal.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
all right, so do we have a motion to approve those two items?
So moved. Second.
You're still not loaded?
It just keeps going like this, spinning.
Okay. Let me see. All right, I have a couple of proclamations to present. We have a representative from the Women's Center? Yes, you do. Come on up. We have two proclamations. Is this on? Okay, two proclamations this evening. First one is to the Women's Center Youth and Family Services. We are going to recognize their ongoing efforts of the Women's Center to empower women, men, children, and families to improve and change their lives. This organization has over 40 years of experience providing services and shelters for runaway and homeless youth and victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. The issue of human trafficking has become a worldwide issue, and the Women's Center actively works to help victims find safety and resources to heal from any abuse they have suffered at the hands of traffickers and to assist in the prevention of slavery and human trafficking. The City of Ripon supports the efforts of the Women's Center, Youth and Family Services to increase public awareness, advocate on behalf of victims, and provide a safe place, healing, and resources to move forward. In recognition of the important work done by the Women's Center, Youth and Family Services, we hereby proclaim the month of January to be Anti-Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month.
Hi, my name is Saul Lopez Borja from the Women's Center Youth and Family Services. I am a sexual assault and domestic violence specialist, and I am grateful that you guys are very aware and helpful in sending people our way to get better help for their situations. And so we're very grateful to receive this today.
There you go. Thank you. The other proclamation tonight is to recognize an individual in this community. Been here a long time. This evening we're recognizing Les Eastberg.
She wants me up there?
Hang in there. Come on up. Sure. Right here next to me.
Right up there, all
Yep.
right.
Bring him over here. Last over here. Does he want to sit? Standing okay? Right here, Les.
Yeah, but I gotta get up on the.
I know.
He's as old as I am, 100.
By 2 days. Oh, come on over here. They want you on TV. Yeah. So smile. The whole town's
I got
watching.
a big one, Buster thing.
Les was born in a farmhouse here in Ripon on January 6, 1919. His family planted one of the original almond orchards here in Ripon. Les graduated from Ripon High School, and over the next 80 years, as a Ripon resident, he worked for a bank, for an accountant, an income tax preparer, worked at Sharp Depot, Permanente Metals in Stockton, and Pollock Shipyards in Stockton. And he also started his own almond hauling business. In 1942, Les married Margaret Larson, and over the next 11 years, they were blessed with 3 children, Elizabeth Ann, Daniel, who's here, and Arthur. In 1944, Les bought the Ripon Ranch on Moeller Road from his mother, and in 1971, he moved his hulling operation to that ranch. Les lost his first wife in 1982, and 2 years later, he married Margaret, at that time Westine, and he partnered with Margaret's brother Gerard to operate the hulling business. In 1992, Gerard's son took over as the sole operator of the hulling business, and Les retired. In December, well, that's what it said when I got it. He doesn't think he retired.
I thought it was kind of funny.
And in December, the Ripon Chamber of Commerce selected Les to be the Grand Marshal for the Ammon Festival Parade. And 2 days ago, January 6, 2019, Les celebrated his 100th birthday and his 100th year living in Ripon. I got to read the last paragraph.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Les. Happy birthday to you. How old are you?
And I want to read the last paragraph on the proclamation because I think it sums up everything pretty well. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of City of Ripon, speaking on behalf of all our people, publicly express our sincere appreciation to Les Eastberg for his outstanding contributions to the community, maintaining the highest standards of excellence, both personally and professionally, and providing an example for others to follow. Accordingly, we extend our best wishes to him for many years of health and happiness in the future. Congratulations.
I didn't know I done all that.
No, well, there was more. I had to cut down.
Memory's good.
You have something you want to say?
Well, I would thank you all for the, I can't laugh, I mean, I laugh at myself for what I'm doing here. But I'm glad I'm here.
So are we. We're glad you've been here, and we hope you'll continue. There's your proclamation. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at the end of February.
In February? Okay. I don't know what it's for, but I'll be there.
We want to get a picture. All these guys want a picture with him. So
Group
just hold on.
photo.
Get up here. What happens when you're a celebrity? Everybody wants a picture.
A picture? You got second cameras, because you'll break the first one.
Two of you over there.
But I'm gonna look really short over here.
Well, that's
These next to me were like work on.
One, two, three, smile.
No, it's electronic, they don't click anymore. All right, thank you. Thanks for getting here, appreciate it.
Well, I am too, but for once, I got in front to see what was in the back.
There you go. And we're proud of you.
Well, that part, I was.
My money runs out in 95, so I'm gonna have to die at 95. Whoops. I have my money runs out in 95. If it runs, I gotta show some real estate. So I gotta-
You're gonna have to start breaking apart the empire.
Hey, Daniel, you only got, what, 65 years to go?
I got 30.
Well, no,
Wow, I just messed up my mess.
Uh-oh.
69.
Oof.
my man.
I've got a retirement age left in me.
All right, that's done, so let's see. All right.
It's always a good thing. It's always a good thing.
After 100 years, he's entitled to a few minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear her talk.
Okay, we'll move on. Item 2A, zoning code text amendment pertaining to accessory building structures, patio and shade structures, and recreational vehicle covers in residentially zoned parcels. Mr. Zeidervart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow council members. This is a public hearing tonight on this item, so we will probably gather some public comment as well as council's comments on this. And I think the first reading and introduction would be at the February meeting, so we're not intending to adopt anything this evening. We're just looking for some direction on how the council wants to move forward with some of this. Basically, the North Point specific plan area out there really kicked off and redefined some new classification for housing for the city of Ripon. We're starting to see some of the fruits of that labor regarding the North Point plan with the current development of the vineyards, which is out by Midland Park, and the approval of 2 other medium density projects, which is further south down on Fulton Road. With the development of these new housing densities, there's many challenges regarding lot development and setbacks. Currently, the regulations pertaining to storage buildings, accessory buildings, which includes pool houses, detached garages, shops, stuff of that nature. Patio and shade structures are all defined in Chapter 16-140 of the Ripon Municipal Code, which is dimension regulations. Of some of these medium density and higher density lots are starting to develop, it has become pretty apparent that some adjustments to our standards need to happen so that these lots can actually enjoy building some patio covers and possibly some accessory buildings or structures on their lots. We put together a couple attachments of the areas of concern for Chapter 16-140 and put them into tables. Hopefully that helped clarify a little bit of what we're looking at this evening. There's really 4 areas of concern there. There's one area called accessory buildings and structures. These are structures that are defined in the Ripon Municipal Code as a structure which is detached from the principal structure on the same lot, incidental to the principal building, and it's not designed for permanent human habitation. It may include conditioned space. The term accessory building or structure includes, like I said, sheds that are larger than 120 square feet in size, which would be like a detached garage, workshop, tool shop, storage buildings, rec rooms, and pool houses, such of those natures. Attached patio structures, these are structures that are defined in our code as patio or shade structures that are physically attached to the main house or has their supporting structures closer than 6 feet. So if the supporting columns are closer than 6 feet to the main unit, they're considered attached for the purpose of the building code and our planning code. A detached patio is something that you might see built away from the main house, sitting in the back part of the lot. And then also that chapter does cover recreational vehicle covers, which you probably have seen around town in some of our lots. So for the purpose of this public hearing tonight, we will be discussing accessory buildings and attached and detached patio structures. We anticipate revisiting the recreational vehicle covers at a later date, which will also include a discussion of recreational vehicle parking when we go through that as well. So as we mentioned above, these buildings for accessory buildings and structures, let me get to that slide. I know it's kind of hard to read. But these are buildings, again, that are incidental to the primary residence on the lot. They really fall under 2 distinct categories. The categories are accessory buildings outside of the net buildable area. So if you see that little diagram that was put together there on the right, that really defines what's the net buildable area. So the white area of that is where a house could be built. It could actually take up that whole space or not. So if somebody wants to build an accessory building or structure inside that white area, it falls under different standards than if you're trying to build it out in the green areas. And you can't obviously build it out in all those green areas because some of the green areas, like up against the city street at the front setback of a lot, you're not allowed to build a storage or accessory building in that front setback. And even on a corner lot, you're not allowed to build it out on the side yard setback. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit of where things could possibly be built. So to kind of step through a little bit of the changes, there's not a whole lot of changes we're proposing for those. If you kind of flipped or look at the, which is the left side there, which is the table that was put together. The first column in that table is actually our existing standards for residential lots, for accessory buildings and structures. And then the next three columns there, where you have some yellow and green, is what we're proposing. So one proposal is for residential lots that are everything except R3, R4, and R4U. R3 is our medium density zone, and R4 and R4U is what we consider high density, so apartment, condo type lots. So everything's pretty much being proposed to be the same, with the exception that we've had some instances where people want to build accessory buildings or structures in the back part of their lot. Our current standard will not let them go any closer than 10 feet to the rear property line of their lot unless they get a use permit, which they can come in front of the Planning Commission and ask for that. And then the neighbors are notified of that, and they can come and support it or not if they want. And the Planning Commission decides if they're going to allow that. That's our current standard. We are proposing that on lots that have the rear property line up against a non-residential zone, be that industrial, be that commercial, a city park, or even a city street, that they would be allowed to build their accessory buildings or structures to within 5 feet of that rear property line, because they're really not disturbing anybody directly behind them as a residential use. So that's one of the changes that's in front of you here tonight for those buildings and structures. And that's for all lots that are everything except medium density and high density. For the medium density lots, the stuff that's really changing there, which is in the green, we are proposing to have side yard setbacks, which is the same as defined by the lot size. So if you look under our municipal code, under residential chapters, depending on the lot size for medium density, that kind of defines your side yard setback. Some are 4 foot, some get down to 3 foot in side yard setbacks in the medium density zone. So if the house can be sitting at 3 foot off the side property line, we're proposing that the accessory building or structure could be built off at 3 foot off that side property line as well. And then on those lots, we are proposing that the rear property line, the accessory building off the rear property line, be allowed to be within 5 feet. Some of these lots are very small backyards, limited space, and in some of those areas, you do expect to have houses closer together, as you can see if you've driven out at the by the Mifflin Sports Park with the new development out there. Houses are a little bit closer together in medium density. So that's being proposed to be within 5 feet. And then the last column there for high density, we're proposing that anything that be built on a high density site would have to come in front of the Planning Commission and with a site plan permit to be approved. Typically an apartment complex like the one you're seeing built out on North Ripon Road, the whole site's pretty much taken up with buildings and structures, so we'd want to see how they're going to fit that in the master plan out there, how much open space they're going to be taking up, and whether it's compatible with the existing design and such. And that's something the Planning Commission could obviously take a look at and make a determination on. And so that's what we're proposing for that. Height limit on these things, on these accessory buildings, there's a 12-foot height limit for these accessory buildings. We were anticipating or trying to look at maybe going to a 15-foot height limit on that. The Planning Commission actually pondered that idea and decided to keep that. They wanted to keep the recommendation to City Council at 12-foot height limit for those structures. So that's what's in the chart here in front of you tonight is the 12-foot height limit. There is a size limit of 720 square feet for these structures. And then for lots that are bigger than 10,000 square feet, which is some of our single-family residential lots, they can actually go a little bit higher than that. It just gets into a lot coverage issue. So one of the proposals, obviously, here in the staff report for you tonight is that maybe the size limit goes away and we just look at lot coverage. Because if you look at our residential chapter 1616, I did put a copy on your chair there to look at. Every zone, a residential zone has different percentages of coverages. So your typical lots that you would see in town, which we call like the R1L, which is a category for us, we allow up to 40% of the lot to be covered by buildings and structures, no more than 40%. So it would be a proposal to just limit the size of the accessory structure depending on how much lot coverage they have. So if they can build something bigger than 720 square feet but still not cover the 40% of that lot, then why not let them go ahead and give that, maybe build something a little bigger. Some lots might have some already other structures on the lot, and they might not be able to build up to 720 square feet. So I think we would rather, instead of setting a size limit for each structure like that, just let it be dictated by lot coverage, as defined in our code here. That's kind of everything in a nutshell for accessory buildings and structures. Those are the ones, again, that can be built. If you're looking at that diagram up there, they can be built in the rear half of the lot. So there's that dashed line that indicates the halfway point of the lots up there. So in the rear half of the lot, they could be built, and those would be ones that would be built in those green spaces that you're seeing, the rear yard or side yard. So I will probably stop there and see what questions we can flesh out at this point.
Anybody have any questions on this one?
I just have one question, Mr. Mayor. So, Ken, so this was just derived because of North Plains, not because we've had complaints, not because of any other reason other than we needed to kind of improve what we have now, right?
Correct. We have had some people wanting to do some accessory buildings or structures, maybe backs up to a city park, and they want to get within 5 feet of the rear property line instead of 10, and they don't want to pay the use permit fee to get in front of planning commission. So we've had some of those concerns or comments of, why can't I build to within 5 feet? I don't back up to anybody. So we have had those come up. And we have had some comments of accessory buildings or structures. I wouldn't necessarily say they're the ones that would be built in the green space, but we have had some in town that are built in the white space, which fall under a totally different requirement and regulations. So, but for the most part, you are correct. To kind of give some opportunities for these newer lots that we're seeing being developed right now along Fulton and medium density as we move forward in development. We do have other medium density areas planned for our community in the future that this would allow them to do some things on their lots.
Thanks.
I have a couple questions. R4 and R4, what is the other one? U? Would there ever be a house built on an R4 or an R4U lot?
No, they're not. A single-family residential is not allowed in those zones, so we would never be able to approve a house.
So it's only going to be apartments and condominiums?
Yep.
So these would be units that, or any accessory structure would be for the unit rather than for an individual?
Right. It would, you'd have an apartment owner, a complex owner that would want to be putting something up on their site. Yeah, and so we would think that bringing it in front of the planning commission and really looking at the whole site as a whole and the design of it, you'd want it to be compatible with the existing apartment complex. You'd want to make sure it's not taking up all their open space for the residents. So those are the things we'd really want to look at.
Well, that leads me to my second question, which will probably have others. When it comes to residential, where a house can be, as I understand what's in here, there are two possibilities. One, you're going to build an accessory structure that's within the white area. The other is you're going to build an accessory structure that's maybe part in the white, part in the green, or all in the green. The rules that you have here are for the green.
The green or what you said,
Or partial white green.
Yep.
And I don't know if this is the time or place. As far as I'm concerned, we need to talk about the ones that are going to be in the white area too, because that's where the problem is.
And it would fit in this chapter. It would be something that would be included in this chapter. So I think what Mayor Zuber's alluding to here is that when you get into the white area of the building lot, that's an area that you can either add on. You can add on to your house if you want, and you can make it 2-story. You can keep it single-story. You can design it the way you want. There's really no design standards that we look at. I mean, you could submit building plans to the building department, add a 2nd story on your house, add a master bedroom off the back or whatever. When you get into that white area there's different standards. The standards like height limits become like 35 feet in height, because that's what a 2-story house could be. So when you're building an accessory structure in that white area, that's the standards you go by. So we've had some accessory structures here in town built in that white area, and it's like a 2-story metal shop on the lot in a residential zone. Had some people probably make some comments on those. I haven't got a whole lot of complaints on them, but we have had people make some comments of how, how's that allowed, or how, but that's how they're allowed, because they meet the requirements, they're not exceeding the height limit, they're not built outside that white zone that you're seeing on your diagram there, they're just complying with setbacks and height limits, and building code, obviously.
Well, because I want to build off of one thing you said when you were talking about the accessory structure in an R4. You said you wanted to make sure it was compatible with the structures that were there, blah, 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 blah. The way that, from what I've seen, the way the building requirements are generally in an R4 area, none of that applies. A person could, if they had a big enough white area that their house, and they could build a 50 by 50 metal shed 2 stories high, there's nothing right now that would stop them from doing that.
Yeah, right.
And I think there ought to be. I mean, if we're gonna worry about whether a structure by an apartment complex fits in, I think that this requirements for residential accessory structures ought to have some of the same controlling factors. If I want to add on to my house and it's a 1-story house and I want to build an addition that's 2 stories high, fine. I'm not going to put a metal shed attached to my house. It's going to look like I hope it's going to look like the rest, it ought to look like the rest of my house. And to me, if somebody wants to build a structure taller than the existing residence, it ought to be attached to the residence. Not by a causeway or a walkway or a covered whatever, but literally share a wall with that building so that it's part of the house. Now, you want to build part of your house that looks like a Quonset hut? At least it's part of your house now, it's not a shed sticking out in the backyard. I doubt if you'll do that. You'll probably be a little more careful with it. And I think we need to look at that, because the ones around here, that's what they've done. They're a metal shed stuck in somebody's backyard. I don't think they'd have done that if that was part of their house. Otherwise, if they want a detached structure, then as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't be any taller than the house that's on the lot. You want a 2-story shed for your RV, add a 2nd story to your house, be my guest. Otherwise, it's got to be. And I still don't understand the height thing, because it's not 12 foot high isn't 12 foot to the top of your house. It's somewhere in the middle, because what is it? You take the average height from the top plate to the peak, and that's what it is, or something like that. I mean, it's silly.
It's up on the screen there. Actually, the different types of roofs are measured different ways. So the gable or hip roof that you're seeing on the upper left is measured to the kind of the average roof height. So 12 foot is what we say it cannot exceed. So a 12-foot height at the peak could actually be like 15 or 16. Mansard roof that you're seeing on the top right there, that's something you probably see like in downtown. That's just got the false facade on it. They measure to what they call the deck line, the very top of the roof. A flat roof, obviously, you're measuring to the flat part of the roof, and then the sloped roof, you're taking the average height again of those. And that's the way I think we've been doing measuring building heights, not just the city of Ripon, but quite a few other jurisdictions. That's just the standard kind of the way they've done it. So 12 foot height limit is really, if you're going to be putting a limit on it, you should just say 16 feet to the peak or something.
What is it, 12 by 12, 6 by 12 slope? My 12 feet could really be almost 20 feet by the time you get to the top of the house.
Right. Well, you may run into a problem there if you have a big enough structure where the pit, if you're trying to match the house, the pitch of the roof, you may not fit into it. You couldn't because your pitch is too high. Sometimes a height standard may force you to do something to make it look different than your house. It may make it look funky. So it's maybe a problem too if you have a really steep roof custom house.
Right, I think some of these, obviously these standards and regulations have been around quite a while. I mean, some of the newer construction houses you're seeing, especially custom homes, they go with a pretty good sloped roof. I mean, they get quite a bit of airspace up there and a lot of insulation. So, like, you're correct. If you're building a pool house or something, you're trying to match that peak or that same, that 12 feet could really.
Pretty hard to do.
Well, but I'm not necessarily saying that you have to match it. I just don't think it ought to exceed it. In other words, if,
Right, I mean, you
that's
don't
what
have to
I'm
ma-
looking at, is it ought to fit in with what's on there.
Yeah, I'm just saying if you do wanna match the
Yeah.
pitch of your roofs on two buildings, the
Right,
way it
you
is right
might
now, you
not.
might not be even be able to
Right.
do it. So maybe the height limit in that case is the problem, but.
But I'd just like to see that worked into this thing. If we're gonna deal with all this stuff, let's deal with it all now and get it over with. Any other questions?
I'm just gonna say, I fully agree. Otherwise you get less than acceptable things being built, and that could happen.
It has happened.
It could happen again.
Yep.
Well, I guess to counter that to a certain extent, I guess if you have a house, big enough lot where you can put a detached garage, maybe you have an older house, doesn't have a garage built with it or something. You wanna build a garage off of it, and you wanna do a steel building or something instead of and there's I guess a level of appearance that we're looking for, right? I mean, and there's obviously different levels. There's the Quonset hut, and there's really nice steel buildings that you could go build that may not look anything like your house, but it could still be a acceptable building. So I think it's hard to define what's acceptable in that regard.
Yeah, and I agree, and the problem is, I don't like people telling me what to do, and I don't think anybody else does, but maybe we can work on some wording or something to kind of get to where we think we want to be, because we don't want a lot of garbage being built either.
Well,
Yeah.
my point is, if you want to vary the outside appearance, then I don't want it taller than the building. If you want to go up high, then it's got to tie in, I want it to tie into the existing structure, not be something that is totally different and sticks out like a sore thumb. That's what I'm after.
I agree.
So figure it out.
You can use sore thumb if you want,
Just
but
redo the whole chapter, Ken, that's what we're asking for.
we're not done yet. We only did 1 out of 4.
Clear as mud.
Yeah, but that's why you're here, is to get the mud out of the picture.
And we haven't even done the public hearing.
I'll try to turn it into some
Well, we still got more.
murky
Yes,
looking
there's
milk
still
or
3 more
something
parts of this.
for you guys. When we got into the attached patio or shade structures, and then the detached patio and shade structures, we started looking at our current code. As you can see, let me get to that next slide here for you. So on the left is the attached patios, and on the right is the detached patios, the tables. Again, the first column is our existing standards, so that's all in yellow. Anything that's being proposed to be changed is in green. There's not a whole lot of changes we're proposing there. We did, after we looked at those, they did provide quite a bit of opportunities for people to build patio covers, no matter what size your lot was. It's just the R3 lots where the medium density, for example, some of the houses out there being built by Mifflin Sports Park right now, the backyard depth is 13 feet. So they could go up to half that distance to the back property line with an attached patio. So they're only gonna get like a 7.5 foot covered patio, but they do have some opportunity to do something.
But if they have like 5 feet left in their buildable area and then the 13 feet, they
Right.
could use the 5 feet plus
Correct.
the 6.5 and have
Yes.
a 11-foot deck.
Yeah. We're talking, they can take up half the distance of that green space that we were showing, the required rear yard. So some of them have larger backyards out there than the 13 feet, but some are built right up to that 13 feet, and they would be limited to a little bit smaller patio. But they do have some opportunities to have at least some cover over themselves when they exit out the backyard and maybe have a barbecue out there or something. So there's not a whole lot of changes there. What you're seeing in the green there is the R3 at the very bottom of the R3 column. There's not maximum lot coverages, as you can see in our table that I handed out, the table 16.16.3. So R3 zoning does not have the building lot coverage max. There is no max on those because R3 covers a whole host of different size lots, anywhere from what you're seeing out there, about 4,800 square feet, down to possibly attached townhomes and stuff that could be built, or condos. So we didn't get into a building coverage max. We did define a lot of that stuff with the North Point plan that did make it actually into our our residential chapter 1616. When you get into some of these higher densities or so, we define how much yard space you have to have per unit, because I mean, they might want, you know, patio type homes and different type of yards than what you see in a normal residential single family lot. So we don't have lot coverage maximums there, but we do want to make sure they're not covering more than their required rear yard, more than 30% of the required rear yard, like we do all other parcels in town. So your rear yard is defined by, you know, for say a basic lot, you know, you have a 30-foot rear yard and it runs property line to property line. You're not allowed to cover more than 30% of that open space in the backyard with a patio cover, a pool house, a tool shed, storage shed.
Swimming pool?
Those are not, though you can do the swimming pools are not considered a structure. So anything with a roof, like a patio cover or building.
Okay, then I have a question. You have this 30-foot area.
Mhm.
I can't use more than 30% of that for my pool deck. Is that what you just said?
No, I mean a structure like a building, obviously.
roof,
So something, you know, a deck would be considered like flat. A deck
Okay.
would be flat work. I don't think you'd need a permit for like a deck that's not higher than.
So if
30
I want,
inches in
all
height.
right, I'm trying to get in my head how a pool might mess this up. If I've got this 30-foot area back here that's for my yard, and I cover 65% of it with a pool, just the pool.
You're good.
I know, but now I want to put a pool house in.
Okay.
And since the pool doesn't count against my 30-foot setback, I can use, I have 35% left. I can use all but 5% of that for my pool house, as long as I don't get closer to the fence, then.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Put your patio on a little island in the center, have a pool that goes all the ways around.
That's right.
It works.
So we have seen in probably the last 10 years or so, we have seen actual pools include covers with them, you know, where they're actually built as part of the pool. You never used to see that. Now you're starting to see where they got a couple posts maybe in the pool and a seating bar in the pool and it's covered and stuff. Those become patio covers, so that is a structure now. That roofed portion of that is a structure, so that does count against your rear yard and your lot coverage.
So if I had my 65% pool, I couldn't cover the whole thing,
Nope.
Only half of it,
only half.
not even.
Okay.
And that's it.
I just want to make sure I
No
understand this, because man, when I read this the first 3 times, my head was spinning.
I will say it is challenging. Having looked at it from other people who have asked me to look at it for them, it is often challenging to figure out where a project fits into it, so.
Well, if you look at this chapter and you look at our residential chapter and some of the setback allowances we allow, I mean, a lot of cities are basic. Your rear yard's 30, your front yard's this. We have a lot of allowances where people can carve into space like that because they want to do different things with their house. And so we have a lot of different allowances, but it's a pretty confusing, you know, code.
Pretty confusing?
Well, that's why, you know, there's a phone number here you can call and we'll help you through it. It does take a few times, though, and to get through some of these, sometimes it does. And then obviously the R4 and the R4U, which is high density lots, we want to look at that the same way if we're doing the accessory buildings. If they're trying to put some covered structure or something on their site, we want to look at, you know, are they trying to take up all the open space for their residents, and, you know, what is it? It might be something that we would want to have them do or not, but we could take a really good look at it, and it would come through the planning commission. And then a detached patio, kind of the same standards there. Detached patios actually can be within 3 feet of the rear property line, the side property line. You could, you know, say you wanted to build a detached patio in the rear of your lot. There, you can do that. It's just they are limited to a 12-foot height limit at that point. You know, something that close to the back fence, we didn't want these big monstrous roof structures, obviously that close and staring at your neighbors. So those were standards that were in place at the time, and I think those still work well. And so that's what's being proposed for attached and detached patios, so.
But if you had a detached patio cover that was within the buildable area, all
Sky's the
bets
limit.
are off.
Not sky's the limit, 35 feet.
Well, that's what I mean.
35 feet's the limit.
Yes.
I would like that looked at too. I just think compatibility-wise, your house ought to control what's going on, not just your imagination because you can do it. You want a 35-foot tall patio cover, then add a second story and go crazy. Otherwise, you're sort of limited by how tall your house is.
And that's about it for tonight. We weren't gonna get into recreational vehicle covers. That was part of your packet, just so you guys
Someone
could
wants
look
a
at
tank
that.
house. Maybe someone wants a tank house, a windmill in their yard.
And see if you wanna, obviously get familiar with that before we dive into that. But I think we need to include that as part of the discussion with RV parking. Because covers are allowed in certain spots, but parking can be allowed in other spots, and there's no covers allowed in those spots. So I mean, that's a big can of worms I think we need to look at as a whole package. And so hopefully we'll be looking at that meeting before we discuss some of that. So I think I've got some decent direction here. So the plan would be to have this back in front of City Council for first reading and adoption at the February meeting.
Okay, now, since it's a public hearing though,
We need to, oh, yep.
hope everybody was paying attention. Or not. We'll open the public hearing. If anybody in the audience has any comments or suggestions or input for Mr. Zeidevart, now is the time. No?
Pick a number.
Jeez, okay, had your chance. Public hearing is closed. You have what you need? All right,
I'm gonna build a tank house in my yard.
you be my guest.
Better do it now.
Before I can't do it.
The one thing I will say, when you start working on RV parking and stuff, I would like to include the concept of complaint driven. And whether, how that fits, okay?
And talk to Mona.
She has some thoughts on it?
Oh, she's got some thoughts.
She's more than welcome to show up to the public hearing, I think.
We'll have a public hearing. All right, that takes care of that. Moving on. First I have to find my agenda. There's only one more thing, isn't there?
Two.
3A. Here you go.
Give me your, all right. 3A. Ordinance of the City Council of City of Ripon amending Chapter 1012 Traffic Control Devices to the Ripon Municipal Code. Is that you, Mr. Werner?
Yes, I can take this one, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
As you recall, at the last meeting, we talked about our ordinance as it relates to traffic control devices such as stop signs. One of the things that we did talk about was the language we previously had was pretty antiquated language, went back to the 1960s. Stacy's office has gone through that and updated that language to be a little easier for staff, the council, and the public to follow. One of the things, staff did receive a question today from Mayor Zuber, and he brought up the point about the public outreach that may be required as you install a traffic control device. As you recall, when we put the stop sign in on Meljo Avenue, the police chief came to the meeting and talked about the warrants that were reviewed and that the stop sign was warranted. We did put the necessary signs out warning the public before the sign went in, and then eventually the sign went in and it still had the flags, et cetera. Staff believes, and we agree with Mayor Zuber, that is an important point to also include in here. We did it last time, but it's also an important point that we should put in the ordinance. So staff is suggesting as part of the first section there, 10.12.010, that we add a sentence that states, the chief of police shall apprise the city council and provide notice to the public in such a manner as he or she deems appropriate prior to the installation of any traffic control device pursuant to this chapter. So staff would recommend that change, and we did talk about it earlier. we believe that this can continue on with first reading and introduction. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Anybody in the audience have any questions? Then we will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion
Second.
with the addition.
Are you up, Dean? Yes.
Yep, I'm
Okay.
running.
We're good to go. Okay, item 4, discussion item, San Joaquin One Voice Advocacy Trip in 2019, discussing potential projects to submit. And we also need to decide who, if anyone, is going to participate in the trip. Mr. Werner.
Thank you. This is the time of year where the San Joaquin Council of Governments is requesting cities to submit projects to include on the One Voice trip. These need to be submitted by February 28th. Ripon has participated in this trip now for a number of years. I would guess probably around 5 to 7 years we've been going. And, I would say the value in these trips really have been the networking that has gone on and some of the policy discussions that have gone on this trip. Obviously, we have not received any funding for the projects that we brought forward, like many other cities have not received funding. I think if you look back at the last 10 or so years, the projects that have received it has been the airport and I believe RTD and maybe ACE are the 3 projects that have really received funding from that. Not to say there's not value, it's just not necessarily in the earmarks like they used to be. For the city of Ripon, we are authorized to submit a regional transportation project along with a local project, whether it's transportation or other. Additionally, nonprofits are eligible to participate in the One Voice trip, but they do require an endorsement of the local jurisdiction. For the past, again, 7 years, the city has endorsed the stadium project with the Ripon Community Athletic Foundation. Just a quick update on last year we submitted the multimodal project and the SSJD surface water project. So I just wanted to take a minute to give you guys an update on what's happened with both those projects. With the multimodal station, the city did purchase 3.25 acres of property near the old Nestle water tower, both that property and across the street where the recycling center is located. And that would be a future ACE train station. We've also received $3.9 million of federal transit administration funding that would go towards the environmental, the design, and possibly some of the construction for that multimodal station. We've asked a consultant for a preliminary estimate of cost, and they based this off of the Manteca station, but the total cost for the project, I believe, is around $11 million. So we have a funding shortfall right now of $7.2 million. As far as the SSJD surface water project, I think a few meetings ago, we talked a little bit about some of the grants that we've reviewed since the last One Voice project. When we met with the Bureau of Reclamation, they did steer us towards a specific grant, and we also hired a consultant to kind of help us through that process and what it took to be competitive in that. I think the bottom line that we came to a conclusion of is just the timing is just not right. The grants are not big enough. It's too large of a city match right now. So it's better to hold off going after the grants and investing in those grants for the surface water project. So at this time, probably the best option is to continue to pursue some sort of legislative earmark to receive funding for that surface water project. That's just a quick update. If the city council would like to submit the same projects as we've been submitting, the multimodal and the surface water project, and also endorse the stadium project, staff's recommendation, the city council authorize the mayor to sign those local jurisdiction endorsement forms. And as the mayor also mentioned, for the council to consider whether a representative would participate in the upcoming One Voice trip.
And it's in April?
May something.
Okay. Are you gonna go?
I'm not going this year. No, I'm burned out. But I'd like to make a comment, though, if I can,
Yeah.
about these. One of the things that, and Kevin, even though some cities haven't got money, we have gone back there and had legislation changed, which has been helpful. So even though it's not been money, it's been other things. But one of the things you learn back there is you keep bringing back some of the same projects so they know you're serious about it and staff gets to know it and they know you from the previous year. So I think we should continue going back with the same projects till they're funded. I mean, we may be going back 100 years, but I think we should be going back till they're funded.
The trip is May 5th through the 9th.
You wanna go?
I may have some conflicts during that time frame. I'm waiting for some things to come online, so I'm willing to be the primary lead, but I would also ask like an alternative to be there as well in case I can't.
My
go.
schedule's open currently. I think there's value in going. So.
Do I need to buy
Dean,
you
you wanna
water
go?
again? Who?
Dean, I'm trying to find out who's,
Yeah.
you wanna do it?
If they wanna go, they can go. I will go. I don't have a problem going.
God, it's such a popular thing. Last year I had to pull teeth to get somebody to go.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's a well worth trip.
Yeah.
But I will say though that I think if we're gonna send the council, we should again send the staff person.
I agree.
I mean, otherwise, in my
Or the
opinion,
attorney.
or both.
You know, if we send the attorney, we'll probably come back with money.
or a lot less of it.
Which attorney are we talking about?
The one with us. The one with us tonight.
I do have a scheduling conflict, but.
Oh.
Really?
No, I really do.
Okay. You're interested? All right, then
Yeah,
we'll
send
put
those
you
in.
at the top of the list.
Yeah.
You'll be backup. Fair
That
enough.
works.
And can you go, Kevin?
I'll make it work.
All right. You better.
Good answer.
And anybody in the audience have anything they want to say about any of this? Anybody want to volunteer to go to Washington? No.
Stephanie,
I think there might be one person that should.
I'll pay for your trip or the city.
Speak for yourself.
I have to ask my wife first.
All
I'm
right.
not the boss.
All right, so at this point, I would entertain a motion to authorize submitting the multimodal station, the surface water project, endorsement of the RCAF stadium project, and designate Councilman DeGraff as the representative and City Administrator Werner as a representative and Mr. Parks as the backup in case there's a problem for Mr. DeGraff.
Second.
Whoops.
Oops, that's not a good thing.
Well, I thought I seconded, but I don't think I
No,
did.
you weren't quick
Nobody
enough.
yelled at me, so.
All right, motion carries. Moving on. Chief, do you have anything to report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Honorable City Council, and gracious members of the public. I do have an end-of-the-year report for the police department. Now, I have about 10 slides to go through real quick. Most of them are numbers that were accrued during this last year. And here we go. So I tried to do a little bit different format so it'd be easier to read for the people in the seats out here from previous years, but I don't know if that's going to work or not. A couple highlights here. Here's our department activity. A couple things of note. Our total incidents went up about 512 for the year, even though we had 742 less calls for service. And that was because we had a significant increase in officer-initiated activity of 1,254 incidents for the year. Most of those are largely attributed to our vehicle and pedestrian checks and our cops contacts, which is almost 400 of those. We had 55 less officer reports for the year and 37 less crime reports for 2018.
What are cops' contacts?
Cops contacts are non-enforcement community relation type contacts that we started in 2012. Those are the officers' trips to school campuses, interaction with our communities, community businesses, and other residents within our community.
Thank you.
Our Part 1 crimes is what we report to the Department of Justice. This year, we were down 65 of those at 336 for the year. Last year, we were at 401. The 336 is the lowest Part 1 crimes we've had since the year 2000, so 18-year low. And we had our current CAD system, which is Sunridge Systems by RIMS. We started that in 1998, so we don't have any data that goes back further than that. You can see the most significant decrease were in larcenies, that's grand and petty thefts, at minus 58 for the year. We've been doing some special operations throughout the year to try to minimize thefts from vehicles and auto burgs and residential and commercial burglaries. But we've had a significant impact on our reduction of thefts. We did have one increase, and that was in aggravated assaults, and that increased by 1. Everybody else had a minor to moderate decrease. Yes?
What is simple? I get it, what aggravated assault. What's a simple assault?
A simple assault is what you would classify as your regular bar fight. It'd be a dispute where there were an altercation between 2 or more people that resulted in physical contact, shoving, punching, kicking, that did not result in great bodily injury.
So like that?
If you called and reported that, Councilman Parks could have you arrested.
So we can see 2019, we can see the 2019 stats go up real quick, 5, 6, 7.
We call that a crime spree. It'd be 1 report.
Chief, I need to talk to you later.
I do take great pride in our UCR Part 1 crimes. We monitor those daily, and we make adjustments to our patrols and our daily activity based on the patterns that we see. So great job for our patrol guys, our investigators, and we've talked about it many times before. It's a community partnership with the members of our community, which call and report things, and we can respond in a timely manner and handle things before they get to the point to where they become more felonious. Kind of just touching on department arrest. Our department arrest actually went up a small number, 15 total for the year at 1,080. 109 of those are felony. A bulk of those are misdemeanors at 971. As you can see, the felony kind of levels off. Ever since the reclassification of certain crimes in California from Prop 47, our felony arrests have always hovered around that 100 mark. But our total arrest number has not changed dramatically either. So people are still committing crimes, they're just misdemeanor crimes, not felony crimes. And our top fresh crime charges that we make arrests for, drug possession is number 1, possession of drug paraphernalia, number 2, DUI is number 3, drunken public is number 4, and possession of stolen property is number 5. The largest percentage that we actually make in custody physical arrests are outstanding warrants. If you guys pay attention to our blog, you'll see we make quite a few of those each week. But a combination of all those plus the arrests on outstanding warrants make up 47% of our total arrests for the year.
Chief, are a majority of those arrests from warrants issued outside of Ripon?
Yes, yes. And we get a lot of questions about how come a lot of them are cited out. Because of AB 109, Prop 47, Prop 57, there's a cap on jail space where our county sheriff has to maintain certain amount of free space within the jail facility. And most agencies now, because they're trying to deal with the issue of people being transported, booked into a county jail, then getting immediately released on a citation. Most of the outstanding warrants that we're getting from outside agencies, they're putting cite and release only. That way they don't get charged a booking fee. If it's not outside a warrant, say, well, I don't want to name any particular agency because it happens statewide, but pick any of our neighboring agencies. If we make an arrest on that, most of the time their warrant is going to say cite and release only, meaning we can't take somebody in physical custody and book them into jail on that warrant.
Chief, on that topic, I know with the social media posts about department activity, gotten people to ask questions about why someone gets pulled over for a DUI and they get sent to jail every single time, but someone gets pulled over with meth and they get cited and released on scene, and it's just like, why is, what would maybe seem like a lesser crime to some people, why is that booked in jail and not someone with possession of meth?
Yeah, and we get that question quite often too, and we try to answer when we see it pop up, but sometimes on some of our posts, there's a lot of things going on. I'll address the DUI first. Actually, back in the early 2000s, we actually had a department policy that a DUI under .16, if you think about that, under .16 could be cited out and released at the police department, as long as they had somebody to come pick them up. That was our department policy, and that policy was pretty much statewide. The BAC levels varied on what people would release or not, but ours was .16. Because of case law and because of liability issues, they don't do that anymore. They've had way too many people get back into a vehicle after they were arrested and after they were cited out and after they were turned over to a buddy or a relative, get back in their car and kill somebody, get into a traffic collision, and the police departments were then getting sued for that. So that went away in the early 2000s. And if you're under the influence, meaning you can't care for yourself, and that's the same thing with drunk in public. If you're drunk in public, that means you're taken into protective custody because if you can't care for yourself or you're behind the wheel in drunk driving. You're booked, and it's basically to be detoxed. You have to put you in some place where you could sober up before you could be released. For us, we don't have a holding cell. We have a temporary transition cell, for lack of better terms. We can't keep anybody for under 4 hours, or over 4 hours, I'm sorry. A typical person that booked for under the influence of either narcotics or drugs gets kept for a minimum of 8. And so we don't have the facilities here, so they go automatically to the county jail and go to a sober room up there. Then they get released. For drug possession, with Prop, I believe it was 47, with the declassification of certain felonies to misdemeanors, simple drug possession is a misdemeanor. So you have to commit a very serious misdemeanor, which there are very few of those on the books still, to be booked in the county jail. So simple possession is not a bookable offense anymore. It seems kind of topsy-turvy, but unfortunately that's the way the laws are currently.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the explanation.
I wanted to go ahead and kind of include this. It's weapon and force use. We've had a total of 7 incidents where some type of force was used. And when I say force, this means anything above and beyond the simple indexing someone, shoulder, wrist, elbow, and placing handcuffs on them. And as I kind of go through here, you'll kind of understand that a little bit more. So we had 0 discharges of firearms by Ripon police officers for 2018. That was no change. 3 deployments of a taser. That was up 1 from 2017. We had 1 use of a baton. For this year, we did not last year. And we had 4 physical restraint or control holds at 4, which was a decrease of 1 from the previous year. And then we had other was 0. Other would be a mace or OC spray, any other type of apparatus or item that we have to subdue someone that we're trying to take into custody. The physical restraint and control, that is, again, the exertion of physical force, and usually for us that means taking somebody to the ground and for lack of a better term, wrestling with them to try to get them into custody. That's not simply grabbing somebody by the arm and indexing them and putting handcuffs on them. So that's a physical struggle when we see physical restraint or control. So we did have one less this year than we did in 2017, but I will note that none of the use of force use that we had resulted in great bodily injury or death to anybody that we had contact with. And so when we make a report to Department of Justice on our use of force, it'll be 0. But I felt it important to include the numbers that, these are reports that we have taken, that officers said that they have used force within our community. A great topic to discuss tonight, since we were talking about traffic signals and stop signs. I always love to talk about traffic collisions because a lot of our focus is on traffic enforcement and traffic stops. I wanted to touch on total incidents. We had 159 traffic collision incidents reported to us. People don't realize how many traffic collisions we respond to on a yearly basis. And actually that's down 16 from the previous year. In 2017, we had 175. Now, actually, traffic collision reports that we took were at 46 this year, down from 62 from the previous year. Those are reports that either have complained of pain or some type of injury or some type of crime was committed in the as a reason for the traffic collision. We had 10 collisions with injury. Those are minor to major, which was the same from the previous year. We had 11 collisions where the driver at fault was DUI or deuce. That was up 1 from the previous year. And I included this last item here, just kind of to misspell kind of some myths. Out of the 46 police reports that we took on collisions, only 3 were caused by juveniles. So something just to kind of ponder and think about. Sometimes our juvenile motorists get a bad rap, and I thought it was important to include in here that they've only been responsible for 3 collisions that we took reports on. And it was for the previous year, so it's not an abnormality. That's kind of how our community is. So, and then the very last one, the private property collisions were actually down also. We had 54 this year compared to 67 the previous year. Those are usually, it's hard to believe, but at the post office, we get a lot of traffic collisions, which is considered private property parking lot. And then at the travel centers, Flying J and Love's and Save Mart. Those are our big traffic collision areas that are our private property. Next, we have our traffic safety, and this is where we get into stops and violations. Our traffic stops were actually down this past year by 100 from 4,051, where it was 4,151 the year prior. Our moving violation citations were down 64 at 1,302. Our hazardous moving violation citations were down slightly, and they registered at 904. They were down from 959 from the previous year. The percentage of citations that we write compared to the amount of those citations being hazardous moving violations is 69%. So 69% of those citations are for speed, stop sign, unsafe turning movements, and so forth. And the percentage of people that are stopped to get citations is 32%. Roughly a third of people that get stopped get a citation from us. So those numbers are down a little bit. A lot of that has to do with new officers being trained. Some of our newest officers still haven't been to radar LiDAR school. Once they get into those types of additional training, some of those numbers will go back up. This year, our most common violation cited was for speed, and that was a quarter of the citations that we wrote were for speed violations. Last year, it was stop signs. I thought it was also important to kind of talk about mental health incidents. We hear about mental health issues in our in news quite frequently. We actually had in 2018 30 reported incidents, which was just more than double from 2017 at 13. But the more interesting number is below that is the reports completed. So although we only responded to 30 incidents where where people were reported to have a mental health issue, or we call it a mental incident. We actually completed 55 reports. So that means another 25 reports were, while officers were on scene investigating the situation, determined that the person was having a mental health incident, and they were taken into protective custody and transported to local hospitals. So that number was 55 for the year, compared to 42 from the previous year, which is up 13.
What falls into that category of a mental health incident? Is this someone who is suicidal or something like that, or?
The easiest way to categorize it is somebody that is a danger to themselves or others. They're either suicidal or wanting to harm themselves, or they have a mental incident where they're trying to harm others, not necessarily actively trying to shoot, stab, choke, that type of thing, but where they have made threats where they want to do some of these type of activities, and they have the means to do so. Another hot topic for our area. I apologize for those in the seats in the audience. I can't read it, but we'll kind of read through these real quick. I wanted to cover homeless and transient population information for 2018. I think Ripon is misunderstood quite frequently on how we deal with homeless and transient populations. So I thought it was important at least to do this in a public meeting. We do have a voucher program that can offer emergency food, shelter, gas, and transportation for those with imminent need. The main goal is to get those in need to services within San Joaquin County that are currently in place or available. In 2018, the department had 50 contacts where vouchers were either requested or offered, and on multiple occasions, multiple vouchers were given to singular subjects. That figure has more than doubled since 2017 at 26, and tripled from 2016, where we only had 17 incidents where we were issuing vouchers. The department provided shelter at our local, two of our partnering local hotels on 12 separate occasions in 2018. I won't name which ones they were, but we had 3 at one and 9 at the other. Again, the department also provided transportation in the form of bus ticket or ride sharing on 2 separate occasions in 2018. In both instances, subjects receiving assistance were victims of our crime in another jurisdiction, but they found their way to Ripon and we assisted them. Although I won't get into too much information on the circumstances of what crimes they were victims of, I will say that one person was stranded in the Central Valley. They made their way to Ripon, and we helped them get to their home, which was in another state. They were left by their partner after a domestic situation and were stuck. So we provided a bus ticket for that person to make sure that they got home safe. The other one was a victim in another community. They tried to get home, or needed to get home. They actually lived in the Bay Area. We were unable to get a bus ticket for them in a timely manner, and they had some other items that they had to take care of. So we actually got them a Uber ride to the residents in the Bay Area. So those are some of the incidents that we've used funds that have been donated to our police department to help the homeless and transient population within our communities. A lot of our money has came from one donor who back in the end of 2016 donated over $6,000 to the program. And then we also partner with the Ripon Ministerial Association that gives us quite a bit of food, gas, and vouchers. And then we use the other funds for hotel stays and, again, ride-sharing transportation if needed. And again, we kind of talk about we don't have a homeless problem, which I don't think we do, but we do have homeless. So we do have 11 documented homeless or transient personnel that live within our community. So city administrator and I have talked on multiple occasions. We believe that although we do have a homeless and transient population, we don't have the problem because we make sure that they are aware of the rules and regulations that govern our community, hold them to the same standard that we would hold anybody else to within our community, and then we try to get them help where possible. So,
He's not done.
the,
Hampton County?
I'm on the home stretch, only 2 more slides. Our animal control services, again, take great pride. We have great ladies that work for us in our animal control division with CSO Forks, Lemus, and Penny, and then our 2 shelter helpers. We impounded 293 animals, and I can't say just cats and dogs because we get we get turtles and rabbits too. But we impounded 293 animals. 108 animals were returned to owner, and 177 were adopted or rescued, which is a significant number of the total animals that we come in contact with. Unfortunately, 8 had to be euthanized due to illnesses, disease, and some other issues, but it's a very small number compared to the amount of animals that we take in. And Councilman Rasush's favorite slide, our concealed weapons permit information. In 2018, we have a total of 272 permits issued through our department. 42 of those were new permits. We had 170 renewals, and we had 0 denials of permits with our agency.
I'm glad the way you worded that now, because it used to be worded we have 272 people in Ripon that carry guns, and my comment was it's in the thousands, you just know about 272.
Right.
So thanks for changing the wording.
You're welcome. And then again, just our department outreach here. I like to make sure that we're having continual contact and outreach with our community. We have roughly or approximately 6,500 visits to our department website each month. Our Facebook page has roughly 4,543 followers. Twitter followers is 327. Our nextdoor.com app, we have 2,544 members that are households that follow us there. 1,771 Nixle registrations. 448 purchases of a smart device application that we have. And when I say purchase, that's loosely because it's free. But you have to go in through the app stores and purchase that. And then we have our community meetings on a regular basis. That is all I have.
Any questions for Chief Ormonde? No, he didn't. Ted, you're up.
Thank you, sir. Just want to report on our water usage for December. We were at 29.9% of our 2013 numbers, which brings our 12-month running average to 22.9% for the year. That's it.
Can I ask him a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Real quick question, Ted. So I just talked to somebody that just got back from Tahoe, so there was no snow in Tahoe. That was on a higher level. But my understanding is the snow that we've got is wet. Have we got any reports about what the storms have brought so far year to date versus last year? And my understanding, the moisture content is good. Is that true? Are you hearing the same thing?
I really haven't been following
Okay,
it.
all right.
We've been watching our groundwater, which is staying stable, and increasing the levels.
So that may answer it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just went out and did the last
It was like
survey like a week
80%
ago, and it
or
was
something.
below average, but that doesn't include the
last storm.
massive snowstorm we
Okay.
just got. So I would guess we're above, we're at
Okay.
average.
Mr. Zeiderbart.
Yes, a really quick update with Diamond Pet Foods. On December 14th, it was a couple weeks ago on a Friday, they did get their odor control system up and running, the new odor control system up and running. So hopefully you've noticed a difference there. We have had a couple complaints have come through in the last couple days where people smelled it. So we did get in contact with them to ask about how the system's running, if they're doing some fine tuning on it. They're still working through a couple items with it, kinks, getting those things out with the startup, and still trying to identify any other point sources of odor that they might be able to control. So hopefully you've seen a significant difference in the odor here in town. please, keep your ears open for anybody out there that might smell some odors. We'd like to get those reports in and make sure the consultant has those in.
My house is at, I'm usually one of the first ones to catch the smell. And even on the days where we've got wind blowing from that direction, I haven't noticed it per se, but there was another odor like towards, I don't know, Save Mart side of town that I don't know if the people maybe got confused with that being part of the dog food smell, but it was, I don't know exactly what it was, but there was a smell like maybe manure or something of some sort. So just want to make sure we're not confusing the two. So.
Mr. Peace.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just real quick, I did provide the council an updated approved projects list. There have not been really any significant changes. I do want to mention well 19, which is currently underway. It's not on this list, but they are planning on finishing the development of that well here in January. And then obviously if the water quality is approved, we would move on to the actual pump station. And
Is that the one out by Missland
out,
Park?
out by the Missland Park, yeah. And then other than that, Parkview Safe Routes to School project, we will, our contractor will be starting that work this week, or this month. And then our River Road Phase 1 project is currently in the submittal process, and we should be starting that very soon. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
The only one comment I have is your installation of the license plate readers. I think you want to complete it by February 2019, not 2018. Our version says 2018.
You're correct.
Okay.
How far along are we on that and the cameras?
I'll hand that over to Dan. He's been heading that one up.
So the license plate reader installation began last week. We've got 2 sites that are physically installed, and then another that was physically installed this morning. And later this week, we should get probably a total of 5, so roughly half of them up and running and online. So the goal is to do that this week, and then the work continues there. Cameras, we're at about 22%, so we've got, I think the last count, 18 of the 76 installed and online. So.
When they get finished, or at some point, could we get some sort of a report and see how, what they do, how it works, and all that sort of thing?
Absolutely.
Type of thing?
Huh?
Like a demo?
Well, maybe.
You can go in the dispatch center, right?
Yeah, but they can't.
Yeah, we can definitely do
Yeah.
that. I'll make sure to do that.
Okay. Because, I mean, that one night you showed the difference between the 2 cameras was unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can do the same thing for license plate readers for sure.
Okay, thanks. Anything else?
I don't have anything to
Mrs.
report.
Henderson.
I just love living in Ripon. I mean, low crime, we're gonna check license plates. This is a great place to live. I love it. That's all. Yeah, excellent council.
Mr. Werner,
Nothing to report.
Mr. Euchre, Mr. DeGraff.
Oh, as always, thank you to the members of the public who are here to enjoy the evening with us. Unfortunately, you guys didn't have much to say tonight, so we're always, interested in what you have to say and what you guys are thinking. So appreciate being here. Thanks.
Mr. Restuccia.
I do, thank you. So I had a long report that I was going to present. I'm not going to do that. And I was going to
Thank
do
you.
it. I was going to do it from the podium because I respect my council and staff, and this reflection is merely on me, not on the council, not on staff. But I'm mad as hell that we had a cop down in Newman shot by a known felon. I'm not going to say what everybody else has said about the blood's on Sacramento, or it's not. But somebody needs to take blame for that. And so, without going into a lot of detail, because there's a lot, all I'm going to tell you is that I am working with Assemblyman Heath Floor about some legislation to try to get this thing fixed, because there's a lot of, I think, misinterpretation of the law, and I think some police and sheriff jurisdictions are misreading it. So I think there's some confusion. And it's clear there's confusion. And I'm sure our new Congressman Harder's probably already finished legislation on it, so that'll be helpful to Washington DC. But there's a lot of things that are going on, and I don't want to get into a lot of detail now because this isn't the time for it. All I want you to know is I'm personally working with Heath Florida to try to change some legislation because a sheriff that sits in the assembly is trying to get legislation, actually a resolution on the ballot to make some changes. And Governor Brown is suing him because he doesn't want it on the ballot. He'd rather see people what happened to Singh than not. So that's too close to home. I got too many friends that are cops. We all do, that are family. And we can either sit by and just let somebody take care of it, or we can work on it. So we're working on some stuff right now, and who knows how far it'll go with this government in the state of California, but we're going to try to do something. That's it.
Vice Mayor Parks.
Nothing to report.
And I have nothing to report. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for coming. See you next month.